Hello, John. Nice to meet you. I don't think I've ever met you, or maybe briefly once. You are the president of
I think we
Avalanche.
briefly met once, but I've heard a lot of great things about you and XRP Capital. So it's a pleasure to finally get to speak with you in more detail.
And where are you right now? Are you in New York?
I am in the New York area. Avalanche and Avalabs, the company, is based in New York, the headquarters.
Okay. Like New York area, do you say that for security reasons, or it's just you're in a boring area?
That, and also, I could be more specific, Williamsburg, Brooklyn, to be exact.
Okay. All right. I'm in Miami. I don't know where most of the audience is, but I believe this is live. So there's probably people around the world, except Europe, where they will definitely be sleeping now. I've been part of this event since the beginning. This is the third time. I have interviewed the founder of Terra, I believe the CEO of Algorand last year. Now I have the pleasure of talking to you. And I'm really looking forward to it. So I have, we're going to talk a lot about Avalanche tonight and what you do for a job. We're going to talk about a few other things too, because I have, in preparing for this, seen some interviews that you've done, and you are prolific and you're opinionated, and let's talk about some of that. So you said we're going to hit 5 trillion in value in the crypto markets this year. Now, you did say that before this year. Any chance that still happens?
Listen, I'd be a fool to not say I'm keeping up with current events. I do think the market will hit 5 trillion, but I think my timing will be off. It's hard to say that we're gonna 5x from here at this point, but I'm a big bull on this space, and ultimately I think we will see it. And timing was off is the way I would think about it.
Well, I think, yeah, timing was off. But one thing you said that actually struck me as worthy, I'm not just saying this to embarrass you, because I've said some incredibly foolish things, much more foolish than that in interviews. But one of the things you said that it made me pause was, at the time you said it, it was sort of clear the Fed was likely to start tightening. And one of the things you said, which, to be honest, we weren't fully sure of ourselves, is you said that you thought crypto might be somewhat exempt as a risk asset to Fed tightening.
Okay, I'm not sure I said that or how I said it. Maybe I need the context.
No, you might have said it differently, but it's worth exploring. Like, was there a notion? Yeah. I mean, I think at this point we understand that crypto largely trades as a risk asset, although this is the first truly deep Fed tightening we've seen. But how do you think crypto is different than risk assets in general? Like, there are differences, right? So.
Well, I mean, there are definitely differences, but, I like to also use math, and no doubt from January to, call it April, the correlation of the big top 10 coins to the S&P was about 0.75 and even higher than NASDAQ. So it clearly wasn't that different from a risk on, risk off perspective in the short term, because what we've seen was in the last couple of years, we've had a lot of overlap in ownership in the asset space, in the asset. So people who own Snowflake stock or own, internet stocks, who then all of a sudden had margin calls because of the, Netflix was down 75% until yesterday's, earnings call. When they have to sell things, they have to sell things they own. So therefore, clearly was similar. I think maybe what I was alluding to, and again, that was probably a long time ago when, but I think the difference that I was pointing out at the time is that I think this stage, this cycle, and both you and I might have gone through various, call it winters and spring, summers, fall, and then back to winters, is that this cycle, there was far more utility and new institutions that came in that I think will be back in here and keep this cycle extended a little bit longer. Did I anticipate it will go down, as quickly as it did with the rest of the high growth? Obviously not. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a 5 trillion. It would be a 5 trillion market right now. But I think I was leading with my excitement on what I was seeing as an operator. And I can tell you, and you probably know as well, being in the space, that the use cases and the enterprises, as well as the other people in the crypto native space who are still using crypto, are actually not decreasing. Examples would be on the crypto native side. If you look at the TVL.
Hold on, John. I sense the segue and I want to get there, but I want to ask one more follow-up question on the market, and then we'll jump right into that, where you're going. And that was masterful as you segued, by the way. One thing that none of us probably could have anticipated was Terra. I mean, some people anticipated Terra was going to blow up, but Terra, then 3 Arrows Capital, and then I don't have a list of entities that no longer exist. A chain reaction occurred there that crushed crypto. Tesla, we've learned today, sold 75% of their Bitcoin last quarter. All this stuff happens somewhat independently of what the Fed did. Now, the Fed tightening may have taken these weaknesses and brought them to the surface. But and I was hoping our conversation would go this way. My only hope is that so much pain has been felt by crypto over and above what has just happened in general to the tightening is that we actually might be in a somewhat healthy position now. There are no bailouts in crypto as we've seen. And so max pain has to be felt. So anyway, that's my opinion on it all. So.
Well, I mean, that's very astute. I mean, I purposely said in the first 4 or 5 months, it was a 75 correlation. Since May, the last couple of months, the correlation is actually under 50%. It's 0.4, 0.45. So those idiosyncratic things you just mentioned and the daisy chain effect of Terra starting it definitely led this asset class to have a different cadence than the traditional risk on assets.
All right, let's segue into product. More fun anyway. We look at what's happened to L1s over the last year, particularly Solana consistently going down. Obviously, what happened to Terra, I felt personally as we were large investors in Terra. What's going on that's good news in L1 world? And what are we going to do from here?
So if you look at a lot of the VCs, they obviously, if they're smart money, assuming you think they're smart money, they are continuing to invest in, you shake your head, but they are continuing
it's money.
invest.
I don't know if it's smart money. I mean, we've seen some pretty dumb decisions by VCs over the last 6 to 8 months, but go ahead.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah. The crossover VCs are still very interested in picking off cheap stuff. So if you look at the funding for L1s, and just take a proxy for it, let's just take a leap of faith that they know something, right? All the MOVE related or ex Facebook type guys like I don't know how you pronounce it, Sui or whatever, and some other ones, they're all still receiving funding and still new and getting going. So money is definitely still pouring into L1s. I think there's a recognition basically that it is still very early days in Web3 as a whole. If I am Andreessen Horowitz obviously invested in us, and they are invested in some of these quote unquote MOVE language, ex-Facebook Meta layer ones, and the question I always have for them is why, and I think it's very simple. We're so early in this Web3 stage. If you look at it, any metric, whether it's users or true users. I know people always say there's 150, 200 million, maybe some people even say 300 million people in the space, but I discount that because a lot of that is off-chain speculators on Binance and on Coinbase and other places. Real users who are custodying their own assets in the true permissionless blockchain using MetaMask or other wallets like that are a lot less. I would divide that by 10 or 15 who are really transacting NFTs, really doing DeFi, et cetera. So I mean, that's such an early stage. So I think what the VCs are thinking is L1s is the foundation, and it is so early. The real competition is not amongst each other, in my opinion, as well. It's really with Web2. We all need to, I know the space is very tribal, but I've been out there with this stance. You and I have been around for some time. I've been a tech investor before I was an operator. I've seen different cycles, early days of internet, early days of SaaS, early days of mobile. There's millions and millions, like 30 million web developers. There's less than 100,000 in this space. So we need different blockchains, different teams to continue to create that adoption. I think there was this view in the early days, and I know you've been in this space for a long time, that because there's such great value system in this space that you can just build it, feel the dream style, and people will come. The reality is it's a slow grind to convert normies, if you will, over to this space. So you need different offerings. Different L1s have different technology, different communities. And that's what you ultimately need to continue to migrate more and more people into the space. We all want the next 100 million real users.
All right. So let's talk about Avalanche specifically. What's different about Avalanche?
I think the first thing that starts is the underlying protocol. The protocol has certain features. It's a call it a multi-chain. It's got three and the primary network and some other chains around it to provide the scale and the speed. It's got instant finality. And even the consensus protocol, we think, is a completely different revolutionary next paradigm protocol. It's not the classical, the Nakamoto. Eamon Gunseer, the Cornell Distributed Systems professor, he and his PhD students worked a long time to solve the trilemma. And they decided that the best way to achieve that is to start at the most foundational layer, which is the consensus protocol. Next is the architecture of the chain itself. Because the way it's set up, it's got instant finality. And the way we will be scaling, and we are scaling actually, is a concept we call subnets. But I'll save that for later on. There's also one other big difference I want to point out is and this is not a technology difference. This is like we went out with a certain mission. Our goal is to tokenize or digitize the world's assets. That's a far bigger playground. Some estimates say it's up to 700 trillion traditional assets than the DeFi world at its peak, which is 200 billion-ish.
Okay. Why are you pushing subnets down to later in the discussion? I mean, horizontal scaling seems
we can
to
do
be
it now. I'm sure.
I think we should. I mean, horizontal scaling seems to be a big part of Avalanche and why it's interesting. I mean, to me. So I'd love to talk more about that.
Yeah. I mean, horizontal scaling is kind of like the idea that you can have an application specific blockchain so that, a gaming company requires a certain execution environment with high TPS, and they don't necessarily want to be bottlenecked side by side by other chains. They want their own environment. At the same time, subnets also provide a compliant enterprise, whether it's a government or whether it is a financial service firm who wants to create, at the network layer, not just at the smart contract layer, a permission environment so they can make sure it's compliant via KYC, AML accreditation. So there's different reasons why subnets make sense. And also, frankly, it does help us scale. That is a horizontal kind of thing. In other words, we have, application specific blockchains. L2s and side chains, they serve their purposes. They have their different benefits and different negatives also. Side chains and L2s, as they have to settle back on the main chain.
Yeah.
Side chains obviously have their own validators, but they still have to settle on the main chain. And same with L2s. So L2s have a good advantage. They are more centralized, so therefore they're faster, but other people will argue that is less secure. And there's also this problem of like a lot of things can be done and committed before it actually goes to the layer one. So if there's anything that doesn't get validated on layer one, all of a sudden you have a cascading effect of a whole bunch of transactions that may need to be unwound. So there's benefits and negatives to everything.
What are the subnets? You're gonna have to educate me a little bit, but what are the I'm using the word largest, but the most successful subnets that you've seen so far? Are they predominantly gaming or DeFi or what?
So the ones that are visible to people that are live already right now, definitely the gaming ones. We have, DeFi Kingdoms and Krabata. So those are two that stand out. They are the ones where, our SDKs have first supported because we have a large pipeline of these as well. And basically, gaming companies want to really focus on just the gaming stuff, whether it's acquiring users or the gameplay. And whereas if you do that, and I don't want to put anything in a negative spin, but if a gaming company has to worry about substrate, we've seen issues with that and having to worry about bridging and then hacks and the foundational layer. This is kind of like blockchain as a service for gaming companies, so they can focus on what their best attributes are and what their core competency is. So that's part of the reason why gaming is visible to you. But in the pipeline, there's a lot of what I call institutional like things that are happening. Those naturally take more time. not only because you have to embed the right regulatory and compliant rules in there, but also institutions, just generally like traditional institutions, take a lot of vetting in general. It's a different workflow, probably a longer workflow. They have more brand at stake, so it's rightfully they have to do what they need to do. You know, we have a partnership with Deloitte. Deloitte started on the C chain. They will be moving to a subnet very shortly, and their application on Avalanche is for FEMA. So that deal took over a year.
What does the application do?
So Deloitte is basically providing, again, their end customer is FEMA, but when you have a disaster and you have so many disparate parties involved and you need to move money and information at the same time to all these various players, lots gets lost. There's a lot of inefficiencies based on these silo monolithic servers. They think they can save 50% if they put all the participants in their application on a blockchain. So they did a ton of testing for scale, for speed.
What do you call that? It's not DeFi or gaming. What do you call that?
That is more, I would call it either government, because FEMA, it's an agency, or it's, I call it just institutional.
And they're using it for communication, or they're using it to move funds around as well?
First, for communication. So, you know, a blockchain obviously has two great purposes. One is to disintermediate a lot of people. So you save money from efficiency, basically gives you more data integrity, transparency, all of that stuff. And therefore you achieve more efficiency and productivity, and you take costs back, and you have, you know, provenance of the record of things happening. Ultimately, they want to marry that with a payment, whether it's USDC or something through the same network at the same time, instantaneous. So that's where we're pushing towards. And they are moving to a subnet. To answer your first question, what else is coming to a subnet?
Is that their own subnet?
Yes, they will create their own, call it a private subnet. So
let's talk a little more about private subnets for like financial institutions. Are you seeing these being built or tested yet? This seems like a perfect use case for it.
Yes, I mean, definitely seeing then a lot of financial institutions that, you know, I wish I can say specific names, but they make you sign NDAs. These are not like your crypto companies. So, but I can share with you that yes, they are definitely experimenting, not for more than just experimenting. They are serious about implementing. And you know, I hate to take it into a general stories, but like we know there's a JP Morgan coin. We know that, you know, the Monetary Authority of Singapore and DBS and JP Morgan are actually working on wholesale lending called project called for DeFi for institutions called Project Guardian. They are all creating, you know, an environment where it's more proof of authority, frankly, and they have to do that to get comfortable and to make sure that they're, you know, they're going to go through that first before they go through true permissionless. I think that is definitely the first step to get them comfortable, get them to be used to the technology, as well as let them see the benefits of the efficiency side of it before they get into, you know, the greater permissionless side.
What are these institutions, or just even FEMA, like when they're talking about creating private subnets, like what is the product, what does the product need that it doesn't already have?
For private subnets, so it, you know, the way we think about it is, you know, we want to make it easy to use for developers. So behind the scenes right now, we're giving them SDKs and the great APIs. It sounds so simple to just say from a business person's perspective, but there's a lot of integration and it's very complicated. So we're working with various use cases. So part of the reason why gaming is more out there is because we've not, I wouldn't say perfected, but we've, you know, launched that SDK and the right tooling to allow developers to easily spin up with, you know, I hate to exaggerate, but with a few clicks. So now you have to create separate tooling, because in a private blockchain, especially with compliance, they have different requirements. You know, they probably want more security. You know, the transactions per second are less. They need to like embed the rules of how people transact also into the subnet. So it's sometimes it's just like business workflow that you have to embed into the code.
A lot of people, I was talking to one of my analysts today in preparation for this, and he was talking about how much people love Avalanche for NFTs, like a new topic. I mean, it's gaming, but Is it just it's fast and it's very cheap? Is that it? Is that all you have to do on NFTs, or is there something else to it? With
No,
I don't
no,
know.
no, no.
Yeah.
To be fair, we're more known for DeFi, and the people who like NFT activity on us
Yeah.
is usually the people who have had experiences where they are buying a $10 NFT and they end up paying 40, and then they all of a
Yep.
sudden
Been
do
there.
similar
Yep.
thing on Avalanche. It's faster and it's a lot cheaper. And in fairness to other chains that are more active in NFT, their marketplaces are probably bigger. We've been more focused on DeFi and gaming and subnets, but our NFT activity as a whole has definitely improved. In fact, we're improving it in two ways. One is to make, again, that experience better. So in our core wallet, which is for users, not for institutions, we're
Mhm.
trying to abstract away a lot of complexities of how to transact, buy, swap, do things, including to see your NFTs in the world of permissionless self-custody. Once we overlay a core wallet experience with the underlying fast technology of Avalanche, they're going to have an even better experience. Then we also are working on business development to get more marketplaces and to get new content to be native to Avalanche, and that's all down the pipe. So I think when they say great experience, they mean the speed and the cost right now to transact.
Yeah. So you used to be an investor, which I consider to be the best job in the world, because you don't really work. Your job is to talk to people and try to make good decisions. What you do now is real work. Why in the world would you do that? Like, why would you go back to that? The whole point of being an entrepreneur is eventually you can semi-retire into being an investor. You're kind of going the wrong way. So why did you make that decision?
I disagree that I'm going the wrong way. I mean, to be fair, the trajectory was I was actually semi-retired, just running a family office. And in 2014, I got into this space because of investing purposes. I thought I could make money on Bitcoin. Really, back then, there was only Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And then one thing led to another. I saw the ICO boom, and I said, "Whoa, I can kind of rewire how financial services done." I thought the ICO construct was really a good construct and a framework if you did it in a compliant way for security tokens. And I became CEO of the digital assets group at Shares Post, trying to tokenize private securities. That's when we first talked a long time ago. This is like 4 or 5 years ago.
And that's you were sort of half sucked into the real world by that point. Yeah.
And then once I got in, I just continued to say, hey, this is, I love running things, not just, I used to love investing. I got into the hedge fund.
It's a lot of work. It's managing.
It's a different type of heart. It's a different type of heart, frankly. It is a lot of work. I probably work more now on an hourly day, on hours per day basis than I did as a first year college, post-college, analyst. It's a different type of work.
That's surprising, but
it's communicating, it's leadership, it's hiring, it's all the fun things that you studied as an investor when you invested in different companies, different styles of management, different types of leadership, different types of product development, all of that stuff. And suddenly you get to apply what you learn. I think it's a lot of fun. And I do work with great people, so that makes it easier. So I kind of take the opposite stance that, I'm going the opposite way. I think I'm actually.
Well, I think you're crazy, but power to you. You're actually out there building, so it's great. I think we're done. I think I saw Robert Leshner skulking around in the speaker room, and I think we're going to wrap up here. Thank you so much. We only got to about half of what I wanted to, but I think people got at least a taste for Avalanche and why it's interesting. And I just appreciate your time. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Michael. I appreciate your time.